Alrighty, so today we're with Paul with Patch, and you are an architect.
Yes, that's right. Here in Athens, Georgia.
Great. How'd you get your start in architecture, and what drove you to it?
I had a friend whose mom was an architect growing up, and one day, seemingly out of the blue, she said, "You should try architecture. When you go to school, you should be an architect." And I really didn't know what else to do, so that was kind of the path I took, and I ended up really enjoying it and followed it all the way through and down here back to Athens. I grew up here and was in Charlotte for a few years and just came back last year.
Gotcha. So living here, moving to Charlotte, then came back, architecture, all that stuff. Well, I guess two questions. We'll just start with the first one is what in particular drove you to architecture, like continue on in school that it stuck and now it's very much so your career and your own business as well?
So I guess what kept me in architecture was as I was designing and drawing things on paper, eventually you find them in the real world and you can kind of walk up to them, walk into them, and that doesn't really get old. And so project after project, it's always really fun to find myself walking through the door that I drew, and I hope that I get to continue to do that for the foreseeable future.
Absolutely. So I would imagine some of it has to do with the creative process as well. Seeing that from start to finish, not just visualizing it in your mind, but also bringing that to life.
Yeah, definitely. And it's a people-centric job as well. So a lot of listening and a lot of asking questions to try to figure out what the root of people's desires and also the problems with maybe an existing house, like a pinch point in a floor plan or, in your daily routine. Do you find something every day that almost like you stub your toe and you think about it in that moment and then you walk away? That's the kind of thing that I want to burrow down to and find in everybody's house so that we can eliminate that and free up a little more space in your mind.
Gotcha. So maybe, I guess in a sense, you focus a lot on when you work on a floor plan, it's figuring out all those little bits and pieces, like I've heard people talk pretty much about like open concept and then making sure you have enough negative space in design where the design is not just to look good, but also complements the owner, their lifestyle, making things not difficult for them to, with the layout and everything, it kind of suits their lifestyle.
Right. Yeah. And for me, form really does follow function. And so we're starting with function, and that usually starts with basically a list of what does your average day look like? What does your average weekend day look like? And how would you like to see your average day looking and your average weekend day? Because I think that a lot of times people go into designing a house and there's a list of things that they want, like a large primary suite, right? So a huge tub in your bathroom, but do you take baths now? And if the answer is no, you probably shouldn't even really be looking at both a shower and a bathtub. So it's things like that, trying to understand not just checking off the box, but what do you need? What do you want?
To really be able to function.
Right, and for your specific life, not for the life of somebody, coming behind you and buying the house.
Right. I would say definitely work with plenty of people listing their homes, and you see, particularly in Athens, you can also see different, where different neighborhoods, different stuff, different phases of development over through the years and how design has changed. But really, I would imagine having something custom designed is not for everybody. So who do you primarily find to be, your audience, your clients, as far as a full-blown redesign for a remodel on an existing home or maybe building a home completely from scratch? Yeah,
it's a good question. Who exactly needs an architect? So in the residential world, to build anything, you really don't need an architect legally. So you could draw up your own plans. You can find your own contractor
Mm-hmm.
or anybody else who can design the house for you. What
Right.
an
Draw it on the back of a
architect-
napkin.
Right, exactly. Yeah. And generally that's good enough to get a permit to do whatever renovation you want.
Mm-hmm.
Where an architect comes in to play in the residential world is really when you're looking to do something that is going to solve problems. I think that's at the root of it, and aesthetics comes along with it. So hopefully we're sort of combining these three things in all designs. So it's firmness, commodity, and delight. It's like a triangle, right? So
Right.
firmness being something that's going to withstand
Test
wind
the
and
time.
rain and time and gravity and heat, heat loss,
Mm-hmm.
heat transfer, things like that. And then commodity, so function, usefulness, and then delight is the last one. I feel like delight often gets overplayed or it gets underplayed compared to the other two. So we've all had experiences with products that are beautiful and yet not very functional or fall apart.
Even in the housing market, you'll see, these gorgeous pictures of a, house that maybe has the nice granite countertops, the gold faucets, all the hardwares, the doodads and everything. But then you go look at it in person and it's kind of, you start to question like, well, how well is this actually designed? Like, where would I, put my appliances here? How would I, set up my desk here? Does the, the floor plan really designed for what my foot traffic is going to be in the home? Is it going to kind of support those things? And then you start to really question like, well, they went for aesthetics, but they didn't go for functionality as well.
Right. Right. So hopefully an architect would be able to bring in all three of those and sort of figure out some sort of a synthesis between the three. And that would be any residential project, almost of any scale, you could benefit from an architect. In my opinion, as an architect, of course,
right. Got a vested interest.
Right. Exactly. A little bit biased toward that, but big and small, I work on lots of stuff. I just finished a project for one of my childhood friends' parents in Watkinsville,
right.
and they moved into a house, much newer house. They were in an old historic house in Bishop, Georgia.
Right.
They moved to Watkinsville, and they really missed a lot of that aesthetic that they had in their older home.
Just about everything in Bishop seems like it's historic because it's an old town.
It's a nice little spot to drive to.
Especially if you like antiquing, because like 10 out of 15 shops are antique stores.
Yeah. Whole economy built on antiquing for sure.
Yeah.
But they wanted something that was going to bring back sort of that charm that they missed. And so we were able to go up into the attic and kind of look around and say, what would be the, I guess, smallest renovation with the highest impact. And so one of the things that we decided to do, and it was one of the initial ideas that they had, was just vaulting the ceiling in one of the areas. And we're going to expose some of the structure and make it look more like its actual structure. I think that was the goal of the whole project, and less of like an application of some kind of a trim, So we just finished that up in Watkinsville, and we're looking for a contractor now. So that was a small job, but it was an impactful job. I think that it'll make a big change in their house and in how much they enjoy it. So big and small architects can help.
Yeah, because I definitely think there's a pull between like designing things usefully, beautifully, but also economics as well with, even like the starter homes these days in this local area, like $400,000. It's, you're getting squeezed a little bit for like a starter home. So there's always that balance with builders where they're trying to go for this aesthetic, but also like try to keep prices in a range where people will buy. But it seems what you do is a little bit more customized.
I would say so. Yeah, I think that whenever people buy a house, the analogy that I like to use is whenever you walk up to a chair, like these chairs that we're sitting in now,
Mm-hmm.
everyone adjusts the chair. I've never seen anybody sit down in a chair that they can move and not move it just a little bit.
Just a little bit.
And that makes it like your seat, your
Mm-hmm.
spot. And
Yeah,
I think
you make it your
that's
own.
a really good thing to do when you get into a house. So whether it is like a major renovation or even something small,
Mm-hmm.
just something at the initial get-go just to make it a little bit yours. So that could be changing the numbers on the house outside. So,
Mm-hmm.
maybe they're not your exact, aesthetic. You can go to the Home Depot and
Mm-hmm.
get new numbers, and just
Right.
little changes like that seem to go a long way with making the house yours.
Because it seems like, at least around here, maybe the United States in general, we've kind of gone away from, in neighborhoods, all the houses look the same these days.
Mm.
I mean, very often, because you have big builders, which, again, that helps with some of the affordability,
Mm-hmm.
but it comes with a cost of, the unique charm of everybody's house. I mean, like,
Mm-hmm.
I live in an older neighborhood built in like the 60s, 70s, and beyond, and everybody's got a little bit different house.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the stuff you're seeing built today, again, it all looks the same. So
Yeah, and
you really speak more to somebody who's maybe they've moved up from that starter home and they're ready to maybe settle down in a place for a longer time, and they
Mhm.
want to definitely personalize it to
do a big
meet their
renovation.
satisfaction, their needs,
Mhm.
not just
Yeah, I think that whenever we're looking at a larger renovation, we're looking at what we have to start with, and then when we're adding on, we want to make sure that we're telling a story as we're adding on to it. So a lot of the charm that you see in old homes and historic homes that people love so much is that you have distinct different times of expansion of like larger homes. And so a lot of the homes like down in Madison, Georgia, they're these old, beautiful historic homes. They weren't all quite the way they are now when they were built. And part of the beauty of these old houses, and also just the general massing of the house being very, very pleasing, is because as it was expanded on, you can kind of see that story. So you see the original house, you see the new house, and you can kind of infer from the way that it
you
looks.
can see the different expansions over time,
Right.
the tweak, the
Right.
evolving of the design.
Exactly. And so when you have a larger house, I think, and I try to make sure that even if it's all being built at the same time, that you can still see kind of that story of if it was something that had been here and been expanded and been, because really 6,000 square foot, 8,000 square foot, like some of these giant homes, really at no time in human history have people ever built houses of that scale that all look exactly the same. So like the beautiful old historic large homes are actually kind of piecemealed together, and it's a lot more aesthetically pleasing, and you can see the story, just understand
You see
why
the
house is
individual
so
elements.
big. Right. I feel like, sorry, I sort of veered off from something. But when you're looking at renovating a new home, I think that starting from the outset with a firm budget and not being afraid to tell the architect or the designer that you're working with what that budget is. I think a lot of times people come into it, and it is a personal thing. I mean, it's the same as telling your budget to your realtor, right? It's something you got to do.
There's a potential for embarrassment there. You think, I should be able to pay ever much more, or maybe think they're not going to take you serious because of the scope of the project. Right,
exactly. And so that's where I've worked on a number of different renovations that are between like $10,000 and $20,000, and it was sort of like just one specific surgical
like
small
element
thing,
like maybe
that
converting
changed.
something to open concept.
Right, exactly. Converting something to open concept, or just flipping a room around, adding built-in shelves, adding some things that really become a focal point in the house, and make it function better for not $100,000, but for $10,000. which is still
It's
considerable
still
amount of money. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's still an improvement.
And
yeah.
hopefully you get that back, right? I mean, it's hard to understand or feel it. When you put $10,000 into your house, it's hard to see it as that you're going to get it back later. But you are. And so every improvement you make to your house, hopefully is an investment that you're going to see, at least 5% right off the bat in equity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I would definitely say design comes key. Even like there are a lot of nicer, more expensive built houses, not directly in Athens, a little ways off. And I'd noted from years and years ago, just from like cutting grass at people's houses, that even something as simple as getting the grading right, those folks unfortunately had to shell out probably extra $50, $75 a cut just because they got the drainage wrong. Every time you try to take a commercial mower over that, it literally want to scrape the grass off dirt like icing off a cake. Or you go into a lot of houses and they seem like again, it just blows my mind, like a $600,000 house, you have one room and you've got like one light bulb in the middle of the room. It's like, how are you supposed to see anything? I mean, again, there's always that balance between like the costs and the benefits, but sometimes it's like, well, how much sense did it make to just have one light? How much, it would have been better to pay a little bit more and have something, well lit, controllable. Because, like as a realtor, that's something I look for every time I'm in the house is like, how well is this designed? How is my client going to be able to function in there? It's got to make sense.
Right. And I think that, like in my experience, I've just looking at houses myself, I know when I walk through them, I'm trying to picture myself there as best I can. And in a completely empty house, and it's tough to do. It's tough to picture, okay.
Paint the vision.
Yeah, like, I don't know, couch, coffee table, even that kind of thing. And so that's generally what I try to do, though, is walk through and picture in every room, how am I going to use this room? Is it going to be useful? And that's how I ended up with a 1-bed, 1-bath house in Charlotte. Just because walking through it, the rooms that it did have were extremely useful, and I was able to sort of jump in where I think a lot of people got scared by the 1-bed, 1-bath just because it seemed like a useful collection of spaces to me in a very cute house.
Right. Able to move your stuff around and design it so that would fit your life. Well, I would say to close, Paul, for people who want to be your next client, how do they get in contact with you?
Great question.
Yes.
So
call the landline. Call this toll-free number.
That's right.
Patch billions every year.
Patch Design. Patch Design in Athens, Georgia. You can Google it.
Gotcha.
The website is patch-design.com. My Instagram handle is patch.architecture. And I recently got a business number. And
nice.
I don't have it memorized, but it's also on
Google.
It's on Google somewhere.
It's written down somewhere.
Yeah, I'm excited about that.
Perfect. Well, thank you for coming, Paul.
Thank you.
Enjoyed having you on.
Yeah, thanks for having me.